Welcome to New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.
All right, another day, another New York Got Game live show. Knicks Weekly coming to you this week, doing it on a Friday early. So we thank you for rocking with us early this morning. Dexter, Henry, Bryan, Fonseca here. We were with you for 2 hours yesterday doing the trade deadline show. Bryan is tired because he's been doing
Don't put it on me.
and one show.
Do
No,
not
I'm
just
saying
put
you've
it
been
on
doing
me.
1,000,001 shows. That's all. You've been
Okay,
doing
yeah.
1,000,001 shows.
This is true. This is a fact.
I'm looking out for you. I'm just saying that you're tired. You've been doing 1,000,001 shows, but that doesn't mean Bryan's going to fall asleep on the show. That's not going to happen.
Afterwards, though.
I hope so. I hope you get some rest afterwards. Knicks playing some good basketball. They've won 7 out of their last 8 games. They've had some time off since they played Tuesday against the Raptors north of the border, but they will return home on Saturday to play the Boston Celtics. And this is a huge matchup because it's the first time they are playing the Celtics since opening night, when that was the Boston Massacre, and the Celtics had their way with them in whatever way you could think, and they just rained threes down over and over again. So we wanted to preview this matchup. It is a big one. I will be at the Garden tomorrow night. I'm really excited to see how these two teams shake out. Celtics sitting at second in the Eastern Conference. Knicks are third right now. And so joining us to talk about the Celtics is a reporter who does a fantastic job of covering the Celtics for CLNS Media and Celtics Blog. Noa Dalzell joins us now. Noah, how are you doing? I'm glad to finally virtually meet you because we've messaged a couple of times and now we finally get to meet. How's it going, Noah?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. And I'll be at the game tomorrow too, so I'll meet you in person then. But looking forward to this matchup. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you at the Garden tomorrow night tomorrow night. It is tomorrow night. My days are confused because it's a trade deadline. We've been doing so much. It's like all confused now. If you know what day it is, it's Friday. Let's start with this, Noah. The Celtics, there's a lot of talk about them, even though they're second in the East, defending champions. Some people say, okay, they don't look as dominant as they did last season. Is that something that anybody should be concerned about? Because I've looked at it as, okay, middle of the season, the Celtics are kind of just figuring their way through things, and they'll be ready when it comes to the postseason. Are you concerned that the team doesn't look as dominant as they did last year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think they definitely don't look as dominant as they did last year, and especially the last, I would say maybe 8 weeks, they haven't been as consistent as the first, month and a half. And so on one hand, I'm like, okay, this is kind of normal. They're the defending champs. Historically, this is what happens. There's a certain level of complacency. The guys have been pretty open about it. Porzingis literally said the other night, you're not going to get up for every game the same. Sometimes you're playing these lower level teams on a random night. And then you have the Cavs game, which they had the other night, and they were great on the Cavs game and beat them on the road where they've been really good. So, I think at their best, they still look really good, but the reality is no team has defended their title since 2017. So
right.
When people say should we be worried about the Celtics, to me it's more like the expectations is they're not going to defend, because that's what kind of the modern NBA has looked like. So are they showing us signs that they're going to go against the mold and actually defend their title? I don't know that I've seen that many of them. So I'm not super worried, but realistically, they don't necessarily look like a team that has all the components to repeat at this point. So. But they've been fine, and they've been able to have some big wins, and they've won 8 of their last 11. So it's not like I think sometimes, I'm sure in New York similar, but the Boston media market, it's there's a frenzy that they, been playing poorly, and then you go look at their record, and it's okay, they're 8 of their last 11 games. They're the third best record in the NBA. So it's a little bit of both.
Right. I think you look at the numbers, for the Celtics. I was looking at before, according to Cleaning the Glass, they're 4th in offensive rating. They're 7th in defensive rating. It's they're fine. That is the mold of a championship contender there. You would think they're fine. With what happened for the Celtics at the deadline, do you look at, I know they didn't really do much other than trading Jaden Springer, but do you think that Brad Stevens is confident in this Celtics group right now and what they can do in order to repeat?
Definitely. So we actually talked to Brad last night before the game, and we talked for 20 minutes. We only get that twice a year, so it was kind of good to hear his insight. But he said, the lack of a big move is indicative. It is reflective of kind of him having full faith in this group. I think they had full faith in this group when they decided to literally re-sign everybody on last year's roster except for 2 players. And so they brought everybody back. They extended everybody. Springer, I'm a huge fan of his, but he got traded to Houston, who was then waived, I think in part because when he was traded for, and Brad explained this yesterday, like a lot of the players that are under contract weren't re-signed. They weren't extended, like Sam Hauser, Drew Holiday, Derek White. They didn't have extensions. And so they thought maybe he'd be a helpful guard in the future. But with all those guys playing and Peyton Pritchard kind of taking up a lot of minutes off the bench, there really wasn't much of a role for him. And then they signed Torrey Craig last night in the middle of the game, actually. Jaylen Brown didn't even know post-game that it had happened. So, they signed him. I think he brings them like maybe a veteran wing presence, guy that can shoot, but he's not somebody, I think in ideal world, he's probably not going to play too much. So it's more of an insurance thing. But I think Brad is ran it back with this group because he felt confident that he liked this group. He liked these guys. And I think so far, like, it hasn't been the perfect season, but through 52 games, it's been good enough that he didn't feel like he needed to do a major shakeup.
Noah, what do you make of Boston's struggles so far at home this season, but on the road seemingly have been better? And especially when you look at it from even like an against the spread perspective, not to use betting as like the sort of barometer here, but when you're looking at home, they barely cover, which means they're in a bunch of close games and just losing some outright. But they've also had, on a positive note, like after a loss, they're 14-1, just winning games. Like for whatever reason, they don't get in these slumps for a very long time. They just had a loss to Dallas, and that will tell you that they may win this game because they also have been better on the road. So like, just could you describe to us what's going on there? Like, why have they been better on the road this year? And also just after a loss, they have shown a resilience to be able to, all right, let's put this behind us and let's get a win this time.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the bouncing back after a loss thing, a lot of that just stems from the fact that I do think they're capable and they're hungrier after a loss. You hate to say it, but I do think kind of the numbers point to it. So after a loss, there's a sense of urgency. They're not going to go sliding. That's been kind of the hallmark characteristic of this generation of Celtics players, like this Joe Mazzulla era. And even before that, they don't go on skids where they lose 4, 5, 6 games in a row. 2 is the max. They lost 2 like once last year. I think it's happened once this year. So it's very unusual for them to even lose back-to-back games. So I think there's a certain mentality thing where coming off of a loss, they're maybe a little bit more locked in. The home and away thing has been such a big mystery to me because last year they were great at home, but last year was a little bit of an aberration for them because historically, the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum led Celtics teams have actually been better on the road, relatively speaking. And in the 2023 playoffs, it was super bizarre because they were losing home games against Miami and then going to Miami and winning. They won game 6 and then got blown out at home in game 7 in the conference finals. And
right.
So this is not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for a long time. And I feel for the fans because I go to both the home and away games and I see there's a lot of road Celtics fans who they get to enjoy it. But like last night, packed house, great crowd. And it's like, you start to see, I just came back from a road trip that they were undefeated in again. And it's like, they're doing it again. And especially coming back from a road trip, I think they've lost like every single one. So they haven't given us any good answers. There's probably some psychological thing, maybe a routine thing. Maybe they're just under, there's less expectations on the road. Maybe they benefit from that. I don't know. But it has certainly been going on for years now, with the exception of last season, where all of a sudden they were this like really dominant home team.
Could you give us insight on how the organization perceives the Knicks and the Cavs as challengers to them? And particularly after the trade deadline where, the Knicks didn't do much, but the Cavs add DeAndre Hunter. And then it felt like, as you mentioned earlier, Torrey Craig gets signed as kind of like an answer. Like he might not play a ton, at least initially, but he's somebody who can shoot threes and has been a good 3-point shooter for 3 years and play defense, multiple positions he can guard. Do you feel like the Celtics really see them as true contenders, like teams that they have to quote unquote worry about? Or do they feel like, not that they're just sort of arrogant about the potential matchup against them, but could they just beat them and it not be like the most difficult thing in the world, I suppose?
Yeah, I think like on the record, anything you ask them about specific teams, I think like the feeling is it's really less about those matchups and it's more about us. Especially Western Conference teams. Like, I don't think they want to hear anything about the West, but I think they'd be lying if they said the standings is not something that they're watching, and particular teams like the Cavs and the Knicks that are right up there. I haven't heard anything in particular about the Knicks as a matchup. I think the Cavs, just because of the lead they gained in the conference and just kind of this, I think pretty unexpected start to the season, and it's not looking like a fluke. It's looking pretty legit. Like, I think I've heard a little bit more about the Cavs, but certainly, I think the Knicks would be a tough matchup, and I think they're a team I have a lot of respect for. I think that they would be a tough out for anybody. And so I've been kind of viewing it as like this is a very likely second round matchup. Just regardless of whether they end up the 2 seed or the 3 seed, I think the 1 seed, I'd be pretty surprised if they caught up at this point. But plenty of basketball left. But yeah, I haven't heard too much from the organization about like making moves to match opposing teams. I think they know what they did last year worked, and it's more about like getting back to that because they're not playing at the same level they were last year. And I think other teams maybe are responding to them. And I was actually, when I was in Golden State last week or 2 weeks ago, I asked Steph Curry about like repeating and the challenge of that. And he said, all summer teams are making moves and watching your film and trying to figure out how to beat the champions. And so it makes it that much harder to even win like a regular season game the next year. I think they're more on the receiving end of that than anything at this point.
I think that's a great point there, Noah, because I think sometimes we forget, and you kind of alluded to this at the top, right, how hard it is to actually repeat, right, the challenge of that and everybody gunning for you the year after you win the championship. When you look at this Knicks team, because it was a beatdown by the Celtics in the opening night of the season, what you said you respect this team, what challenges do you think they pose in terms of the way they play to the Celtics squad?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is just Jalen Brunson because they've had a hard time this season with these small, kind of shifty guards. And so, like, just looking at the list of players that have lit them up this year, like, he fits right in there. I would be very surprised if he doesn't have a good game tomorrow. And obviously, he's a great player on his own, but they just haven't been able to. And I think part of it is just a reflection of their personnel. Like, guys like Drew Holiday have been pretty open about, like, the small guards is kind of more of a challenge for them than – like, they're not very often getting killed by wings. Like, it feels like that's the prototype of player that they have been hurt by more this season. So he's just he comes to mind. And then obviously, like, I think they can exploit teams that don't have good wing defenders. And the Knicks have that now, at least I think with OG. And you guys can tell me how good Mikhail's been this year because I haven't watched him too much. But I know historically he's been a good defender as well. So I think, like, they match up pretty well against the Celtics. I always thought Isaiah Hartenstein was like one of the scariest players to go up against just because they're not the most consistent defensive rebounding team. I think just in general, like, he just poses challenges for people. So him not being there, like, does give me a little bit of, like, I think that was an advantage that the Knicks have that maybe they don't anymore. But this is just a winning team. And every time I watch the Knicks play, like, Josh Hart crashing the glass, like, there's just elements of them that just, you have to be on your game is my interpretation. And obviously you guys watch them more than I do, but I think it's a tough out for anybody, and especially if you're kind of lackluster, you're going in with half effort, half speed. Like, I don't think this is a team that you're going to be able to get away with that too much.
Yeah, you asked about Mikal Bridges. He's had a interesting season because, especially on the defense.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, it's been an interesting season because at first, Noah, he started off where it's like, where is he on defense? He was dying a lot on screens. He wasn't fighting through screens. We were concerned on this show about it. He's been much better since then, particularly recently. We saw a good effort from him at the end of December, I would say, when the Knicks were on a 9-game winning streak. And now during the stretch where they've won 7 out of the last 8 games, you've seen just the defense from the Knicks tick up. They're 11th in defense according to Cleaning the Glass. So he's been better. But I do think you're right. That element of Isaiah Hartenstein last year on this team, right, and just the offensive rebounding the Knicks had, that's something – and defensive rebounding. That's something the Celtics don't have to worry about as much. So Knicks are okay rebounding team. So yeah, I do think that element definitely changes there. I wanted to ask you, when you look at the Celtics team where they're at right now, and we're talking about them going back to back, do you think they can do this? Do they still have the bones, the makings of a team that can go back to back, or is there another level they still need to get to where you'll feel like, okay, confident this team can repeat?
Yeah, I definitely think they can do it. I think there's a couple teams, maybe 5-6 teams that I think have a chance to win the championship this year, and they're definitely one of them. The main thing is just they need to hit their peak at some point. And if they come back from the All-Star break and they hit that peak, then, like, there you go. But we haven't seen it yet, even during this most recent win streak or, like, better play than, these past 2 weeks and the 2 weeks prior. They're still not playing, like, the way that we have seen them play over the years. And I think, fans are frustrated. The media is frustrated. Part of it is, like, they literally played through June, and then 3 of their key rotation players were also on the Olympic team. And I know that people don't want to hear that excuse, but, like, it's a very unusual circumstance. You don't often have that where you were in the playoffs and then played the finals and then the Olympics, and you're 3 of the most high value players on the team, and Jason Tatum, Derek White, and Drew Holiday. So I do think that's a part of it. I think another part of it is just like, it is a little bit, they were so hungry last year. They were humiliated on their home court, lost to Miami, like down by, almost completed this great 3-0 comeback and then get blown out in front of their own fans. Like, it was just an awful way to go. And so they came back the next year and you could feel Jaylen Brown was embarrassed by how that game went from the beginning, like locked into another level. And it's just hard to recreate that like fake sense of urgency when you weren't humiliated last year. You celebrated, you had a parade, So I think they can do it, but it's just remarkable to me. It's very unusual now in the NBA for people to go back to back. So from the beginning of the season, I was like, I'm going to assume they're not going to do it and just look for signs that they are going against the grain. I haven't seen enough of those signs. So that's why, like, at this point, I would probably say they probably won't do it. And that's not being like overly negative. It's just like, statistically speaking, it's more likely somebody else wins. But I would not be surprised at all to come out of the All-Star break and it's like, okay, the machine is back because they've been healthy. Like individually, I think guys have been fine. And Porzingis, who really wasn't there for the playoff run, he's been playing at a really high level. So it's kind of another piece for Boston that it is an optimistic thing here that they didn't have him last year. They could have him for this playoff run. Not counting on it, but they could have him.
What do you think the keys to this game are for tomorrow? And do you think this is going to be the Celtics really emphasizing the 3-point shot again, as they often do, but particularly against the Knicks, we saw it be really successful on opening night, heightened by the fact that OG Anunoby is probably not going to be in this game. And obviously Mitchell Robinson is still recovering and he's not going to be in this game. So you're getting a slightly diminished version of this Knicks team that you can take more advantage of on the wings. Do you feel like it's going to be another 3-point barrage from Boston in this game?
They are. I will say, and I say this all the time on these preview shows when I join other people's, that they are much more likely to lose the more players you take out of the opposing team's rotation. And like, I'm literally not just saying that. If you look at the games they've lost this year, almost always there's like a key player that's missing or multiple. Like last night, no Anthony Davis. I guarantee you Anthony Davis plays in this game and it's his big debut for the Mavs. We see a different outcome from this group. So we always say, like, if you're game planning against the Celtics, literally just sit your two best players and like your odds just doubled. So I mean, that's how it feels. So I don't think the missing players are much of an impact, honestly, because I don't think that but their stars will be there. So that's the good thing. But I think from the thing that I'm looking at for on the Celtics side is just how are you starting? Because the games that they've lost, like, they just come out and like they're down 12-2 within 3 minutes. And from that point forward, now you're relying on Peyton Pritchard to come in and like dig you out of that hole. Like, I'm less concerned about like individual matchups and more just like, you got to start here in Madison Square Garden. You can't fall behind. You can't get the home crowd too excited. So like those first few minutes are going to tell us a lot about how this game is going to go because they can come back. They were down by 26 late in the third against the Sixers like literally 5 days ago, and they won that one. But you're not going to do that against a really good team. That team was very shorthanded, so they were able to do that. But the Knicks are not going to blow that kind of lead. So I think like the key thing is just that early start and just seeing. I think I always say like they don't all need to play well on the Celtics side. You need to have like 3 of the starters have a good game. 2 of them can have a bad game, but they can't all have a bad game at once. So like whether that's Tatum, that's Brown, like they've kind of been taking turns playing well. Like you just need to see a consistent effort for them on the Celtics side. And Jalen Brunson, like I know they only played once this year and it was a long time ago, but he just has all the makings of a player that they're gonna be like, oh shoot, he has 40. So we'll see how that goes. I'm saying it now, but we'll see how he ends up playing tomorrow.
Let me also ask you real quick about the bench battle, because we talk about the Knicks' lack of depth a lot up here. And they didn't really address that in the trade deadline. They may try to in the buyout market. They got Delon Wright, and that's kind of it. But the Celtics do have Peyton Pritchard. We talked about Torrey Craig. I'm not sure if he's going to play in this game, but I do think he'll sneaky be a factor. Sam Hauser, et cetera. Like, how do we look at this bench battle for this game? Because I think this is an important component to these two teams in particular, given that we may see them in the playoffs. Dex and I talk a lot about the minutes that are being sort of distributed or lack thereof on the Knicks side because they don't play deep and the Celtics can and other teams can. So how do we look at this bench battle between these two teams?
Yeah, I wonder, do you think that the starters would play less if the Knicks had a deeper bench? Because I always think of it as like it's not even reflective of who's out there. Like I know just that's kind of been the play style of Thibodeau coach teams. But on the Celtics side, like Peyton Pritchard's the guy that's going to score points for you if anybody is. Sam Hauser has been having a little bit more of an unreliable season than last year. He's dealt with his back injury that's kind of hampered him from the beginning of the year on and off. So he hasn't been quite the same guy he was last year, but he's still really important. I think he's actually like one of their X factors in defending the title. So it's those two guys, and then honestly, Luke Kornet, like people kind of laugh at him. They think, I think people don't take him seriously because maybe the way he moves or whatnot. But he's a great backup center. He really is. So those are your three guys that I think you can really count on. And it's not a high scoring bench. You don't have a bunch of guys that are like gonna go for 25. Like Pritchard's maybe the one that made that leap this year. But they've been playing together for years now, and that's kind of unusual for an NBA team to have like their bench unit have that much continuity and experience together. And they're not a bunch of guys that all think they should be NBA starters. Probably Pritchard does, but Hauser and Luke, I think they're guys that are just very settled in their role. So they have a sneaky good bench, I would say. And last year, I feel like we had conversations around like, is the bench an issue for them? And it's like, actually, the bench ended up being, I think, an asset. But they haven't been as good during this most recent stretch. Like I think like you need Sam Hauser's 3 threes. You need Payton to kind of continue. He was scoring a lot more earlier in the year, but Porzingis coming back, he's had fewer touches. So it probably is something that's a slight Celtics advantage, but it hasn't been as resounding as it was like a few months ago.
Got you on that. A couple more things from me, Noah. We have Noa Dalzell with us of Celtics Blog and CLNS Media. A lot of the critique around the Celtics, at least in NBA talk, and I feel like they get overly criticized for this, but they shoot too many threes, right? And what do you make of that criticism? I think people often ignore how good of a three-point shooting team they are. They do take a high volume of threes, but they're making a lot of it, and they have the personnel to do it. I don't think they should be criticized as much as they are for that. And some people will say it's ruining the NBA, which I think is ridiculous. What do you make about the play style of the Celtics and the amount of volume of threes that they shoot?
Yeah, to me, it's also like people get so obsessed with the number of threes, and to me that's like the most boring talking point. But it's how you get them, right? Like I don't like seeing Jason Tatum dribbling the ball for 10 seconds, fading away for a sidestep three that like he's not elite at compared to other things that he does on the floor. And then like sometimes he makes them, but usually he doesn't. And it's just like that's not fun basketball to watch. But when at their best, and like when everybody's touching the ball and the ball's flying and there's driving kicks, and then this beautiful 20-second possession culminates in like a wide open look for a 40+% 3-point shooter, like that's awesome basketball. So like the number, it doesn't really tell me much. And sometimes you look at the number and they took 60 in a game, and you're like, okay, but those were not great looks. And then there's another night where maybe they took 50 and I loved the attempt. So it's more about the quality, and I think part of it, what's happened is that just like to keep up with them, everybody's shooting that many threes and not everybody has the personnel for it. So it's creates some ugly basketball. I love 3-point shooting. I always like growing up, I found like the Warrior style of play. Like that's what the players that I gravitated towards was 3-point shooters. The thing that I wish is that there was still room in the NBA for guards that don't shoot, just because I think like it would make the game a little bit less homogenous. So it's less like I think just everybody having to be like Derek White can shoot, Drew Holiday can shoot, Pritchard can shoot, everybody can shoot, right? It kind of like from a viewing standpoint, it's a little bit more fun when everybody has their thing that they do, I think. So that's my only critique, and it's not a Celtics one, but it's just like I wish Jaden Springer had a place in the NBA. He's out of the NBA right now, right? He got waived, and he's an elite defender, but he's not a 3-point shooter. And there's not really room for those kinds of players in the NBA anymore. Like it's very rare to be able to make a career as a guard, and not be able to shoot. So that's my only thing, and it's not a Celtics quality. Maybe they've exacerbated the issue, but I think it's more reflective of just kind of where the league is at as a whole.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I love the point you made about the quality of the threes. I'm big on that, right? Like it's not enough to just look at the number and the volume. You got to look at the quality. You have to watch the actual games and see that. I know Bryan definitely agrees on this. You know, he wishes there was more room for non-shooting guards and just to allow for some different variety in play styles. I'm definitely with you on that. I got one last fun question to ask you, Noah, before you got here, because we all here have a mutual friend here in Jose Pavon, who you worked with at CLNS Media. He is now covering the Thunder, and he's been wondering if he brought some of his good vibes from covering the Celtics, seeing them win a championship last year. Are you concerned that he might have brought some of those vibes out there to OKC, especially if the Celtics and Thunder face off in the final?
He told us that too a few weeks ago.
Yeah, he's a good vibe person, so it would make sense. Yeah, I think the Thunder look like the team to beat right now. Honestly, like I know the Cavs and Thunder both have really good net ratings, both have really good records. Yep. But that Thunder defense scares me, honestly. Like that, and that's without Chet, like what they've been able to do this year. So they're, to me, like, obviously the team to beat is the defending champs. I always kind of, whenever I cover the WNBA too, I'm like, okay, the Liberty are the team to beat, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be who I think wins. And so I think, like, the Thunder right now look to me like they're poised for a kind of a breakthrough playoff run, and it might not culminate in a championship because they haven't even been to conference finals yet with this core, but they look really scary. And I was at Oklahoma City. That's the best crowd I've seen this year of any arena. Just from the jump, just so much energy in that building, and just that you can tell the whole city's kind of rallying behind this team. Like, it just feels like something very special is going on over there. So I told Josue, like, I was like, he's in a good situation, and yeah, we'll see how kind of things shake up. I don't want to do, like, we talk a lot about like Celtics Thunder in the finals, and all of last year was Celtics Nuggets in the finals. We were previewing the matchup. We were poking
Right.
what was going to go wrong, and then the Nuggets didn't make the conference finals even. So I told them this year, like, we're not doing this whole finals thing starting in November again. Like, we're going to wait for that to pick up. But they do look great.
They do look good. Noah, it's been a pleasure to
Yes.
finally meet you. I want to let people know Noah just brought it up there. She does a fantastic job covering the W as well. Noah, we'd love to have you back on sometime, especially if these teams face each other in the playoffs. I will definitely have you on for some W coverage. I will also see you tomorrow. We'll get to meet in person, so that'll be fun.
Okay.
No, we thank you for coming on, and be well. That is Noa Dalzell. Check her out with Celtics Blog and CLNS Media, and she does a great job covering the Celtics there. Thank you again, Noah. All right, Bryan. First of all, want to give some love to everybody who has been watching on YouTube. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation with Noah. It was a great one. Everybody checking in with the comments. I see you, Jody Thomas, High Vibration, Bro Mike on Facebook. We see you all. We're going to do quick. This is going to be a much shorter show than we always do. We're going to do a quick bit of real or not. We will answer some questions. If you have any in the chat, we will try to do it. I did see one from High Vibration here. He asked, do we think TJ Warren and Moses Brown should be on the roster to bolster the bench for the playoffs?
Yeah, that's my answer.
I mean, like, look,
the Moses Brown one specifically, he's got tools. He's been around like just a fringe NBA dude, like roster dude, not even a fringe rotation dude for a few years. Do you really want to have him break in case of emergency in a breaking case of emergency situation in the playoffs? Moses Brown? Probably not. And then TJ Warren, we talked about yesterday on the live show, like, he is as positive as the results may be from the G League. We saw what he's done in the NBA the last couple of years. It's like, if you want to put him on the roster, sure, but you don't want to have to rely on them. And I think this is a different question. I like the way this question is worded better, because we were getting questions yesterday about like, hey, they should sign TJ Warren from the standpoint of like, they should sign him and play him. And it's like, he's not somebody you want to necessarily depend upon. It's really a break in case of emergency situation.
Right.
So TJ Warren one, I have less of an issue with. The Moses Brown one, I don't know why. I don't know why. For what? Just play hot courtney.
Yeah, I don't see that. I don't see that happening. And I think sometimes we're getting a little bit of confusion here, where it's that if let's say the Knicks sign somebody on the buyout market, I just want to be very clear about this. And this question, the way it was posed by High Vibration, he's asking for the playoffs. It is very unlikely that player would be part of the playoff rotation, right? Like, that's not likely, even if it's TJ Warren. TJ Warren could help them over the final, 30 odd so games of the season. It's possible, right? As a guy who could get some minutes here and there. You're not getting two players on the buyout market that's going to come here and help the rotation. If they were, they wouldn't be players on the buyout market, right? And then the Knicks also have the limitation, being in the first apron and hard capped at the second apron, that they cannot sign a player in the buyout market that makes over $12.8 million. This is also this is why this can't happen. And they have also a deadline on when they could do this, right? They can't even do that until February 28th, I believe. This is why they couldn't go get Torrey Craig, and the Celtics jumped on that. They couldn't get Torrey Craig, not because of the money he made, but because of where they are. They can't sign players until the end of the month. So you're not going to see anything from the Knicks till the end of the month. The best addition is going to be Mitchell Robinson coming back. Yeah. Hopefully that is healthy. I think asking two G League guys to come in And again, TJ Warren, I think, is a little more likely and Moses Brown to come in. And yeah, the center, I'm not necessarily worried about center. If you have, as Bryan said here, if it's, break glass in case of emergency center, yeah, you're going to play Ariel Hukporti, who already was getting some minutes in an emergency situation these past couple of games. They're going to trust Hukporti, who's been up with the big team more and has played with them more this season and gotten reps playing against NBA competition than they would someone like Moses Brown.
Dex, let me ask you a question, because we both did you cover Moses Brown when he was in high school?
I did. I
did also. Yeah,
I did, and I saw him play a game at Archbishop Lloyd because he was on the same team with
Cole-Anthony.
And so,
dude who went to Georgia Tech I forget his name, but he was
I forget another kid on that team. I went to a couple of games when I used to work for News 12. So yes, I did.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How old do you think Moses Brown is?
I'm trying to get through my timeline here. He's probably 23 or 24.
25.
He's 25.
He'll be 26 in October. I was a little surprised by that. I was like, damn, we've been doing this with Moses Brown for a while, huh? 6 years in the league, technically, because he played 9 games with the Pacers this year, because the Pacers, they lost their backup centers within like a week of the season starting.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So they were just trying stuff out. And then they ended up trading for Thomas Bryant, who's actually, not been bad over there. TJ Warren has like the more traditional, I guess, NBA experience, where he's had a couple of seasons or a few seasons in the past where he's hovered around 20 points a game. Moses Brown, 159 games in the NBA across 6 years, which is actually a little bit more than I realized, but not like he can put up, if you
most
put
of his
out
games
there,
played had to be with Oklahoma City, right? Like if I had to guess,
yes,
is that what most of the
because
games
he
were
started
played?
a bunch of them because in Oklahoma City, that was when they were rebuilding still,
right?
So like
I remember picking him up on fantasy that season.
He's only gotten playing time and like just kind of rebuilding or garbage time.
He's a very good rebounder. Not an excellent rim runner, but he's a very good rebounder. But
Lanky,
yeah, we're at this point where if we're reaching for that, to Bryan, to your other point too, it's that
just play Hukporti. That's really what it
is.
comes
You play
out.
Hukporti. Sorry, I was looking at something. I thought there was some news surrounding Ben Simmons, but play Hukporti. Warren gives also the Knicks a little bit more of what they would need, which is a little bit of scoring punch off the bench, which they could use. So it's not like I can't see Warren helping them over the final games of the season. You want to add some depth to get to the end of the season, but come the playoffs, to Bryan's point, you're not going to be counting on TJ Warren. I don't think you're counting on. If you're counting on TJ Warren to come to playoffs, there's something that bad happened. There's a problem. Like this is not what you want.
See who else gets bought out and didn't make over, I think 12. Is it 12.4? Is that the number?
12.8
million. Yeah. So for anybody who gets bought out and makes over 12.8 million, like if Marcus Smart gets bought out, for example, or a Malcolm Brogdon, Knicks can't do it. Doesn't seem like Malcolm Brogdon's going to get bought out anyway, but that's sort of what we're looking at there. But if someone gets bought out and made less than that, then
I just hope this is hammered home, because I think a lot of fans are going to see some of these guys get bought out and be like, "Oh, Knicks can't. Why didn't they get Ben Simmons? Why didn't they get Malcolm Brogdon? Why didn't they get Marcus Smart?" And it's like they can't. They literally can't do that with these new apron rules. So, hopefully that doesn't that people can understand that as we go forward. Shout out to everybody watching on YouTube. Shout out Nostalgic Nick, the Minute Police. We appreciate you checking in as always. We're gonna do a real or not before we get out of here, real quick. Tried to come up with some reasonably fun ones this week. Not a lot stat driven and heavy. Hey, one thing to keep an eye on. We've been doing these real or nots. Josh Hart, triple double watch. Bryan and I, we took the over. Was it over 10? 10 plus?
No, we just took 10. 10. That he'll get at least 10. This is when he had 6.
7.
I think
he's at 7.
He's at 7. We need 3 more in the last.
I feel very good about this.
3 more in essentially 2 months.
Yeah, I feel good about it.
I
know what would make you feel better. You'd feel better if he gets another one before the All-Star break. That makes you feel a little better. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if it's gonna happen against Boston, but if he could get one in before the end of next week.
I might target that Atlanta game as another one where he can get one. I could see that happening.
Capella's still hurt too. So
yep. I can see that.
Surprised he didn't get traded also. But
speaking of that Atlanta game, this will bring us to the first reel or not. The Knicks will win out heading into the All-Star break. Here is the schedule, folks. Home versus the Celtics, as we talked about, tomorrow night at the Pacers on Tuesday. Then home versus the Hawks on Wednesday. I will try to be at that game versus the Hawks before the All-Star break. That'll be interesting one. They got 3 games to go. They've won 7 out of their last 8. They've been playing some good basketball. Will they go 3-0 to finish the unequivocal, quote unquote, first half of the season, even though they're past that mark? What do you say, Bryan? The Knicks win out heading into the All-Star break?
I'm going to say no. I don't know which game they lose here. I mean, I suppose it could be multiple, right? But this game against the Celtics, I'm not super confident that they win that one. Just given the matchup and given how the Celtics have played on the road in comparison to how they played at home. And then in Indiana's not a gimme. And we've talked about the Knicks on back-to-backs. It's not always the greatest thing in the world. Tom Thibodeau heading into an All-Star break might play everybody 44 minutes on the second end of a back-to-back. Like, he may turn it up in terms of the minutes distribution. So I have some level of reservation with all 3 of these games. So I'm going to say no, they won't win out because they'll lose at least one.
I won't belabor the point too long. I'm going to say no. I'd like to say yes. I do think they're going to play well against the Celtics, though. Like, I don't know if they win the game.
I can see that.
But I think the motivation of how they got beat down on opening night, even without OG Anunoby, I do think they're going to play well. They're going to be very motivated for that game. Now, if they win that game, I feel a little bit better about this happening, right? I feel a little bit better about this happening, but the back-to-back scenario is tough. We'll see. They also have a chance to take even up the season series with the Hawks if they win that game on February 12th. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to go with no. I'm going to say no. Sorry to disappoint everybody. I can see it being 2-1, but let's see. Check in with me after the Celtics game. Maybe I feel different. All right. On to the All-Star game, which is next week, and it is a game I don't care about as much as some of y'all do. Jalen Brunson or Cat will be named All-Star Game MVP. The only Knicks All-Star Game MVP winners: Willis Reed in 1970, Walt Clyde Frazier in 1975. Now, granted, I do not love this new format, but I also don't care about the All-Star game, again, like some of y'all do, because it's an exhibition game, and I don't know why y'all care so much to expect people to play hard. Who gives it? Yeah, who cares? Just get rid of All-Star games. But do you think either will be named All-Star Game MVP?
I'm going to say no, because this is basically, are you taking a Nick or the field for All-Star Game MVP? And I'm perfectly fine taking the field. You also have to look at the situation, right? So karl-Anthony Towns is on Team Chuck. On his team, Jokic, who's not going to care. Like, he doesn't care. So point in karl-Anthony Towns' favor. Giannis will care. Victor Wembanyama. I wonder if Victor's going to care. Something tells me he will. You know what I mean? Like,
he's going to want to show out. He's young. He wants to show out.
He doesn't seem like the type of dude. He's not all buddy. He doesn't want to be buddy with everybody, it appears, from what he says and the quotes that I read that also sound terrifying for somebody who's 8'12". Like, I think, and with Shea, I'm not sure. And then you also have Pascal Siakam, Şengün, Donovan Mitchell. Like, I think on his own team, the odds are stacked against karl-Anthony Towns before you get to, other guys in the field. And then with Jalen Brunson, this is Kenny's team. You have Anthony Edwards, who, to me, is he not the favorite amongst everybody here? Like, he might be. You also have Jaren Jackson Jr., Jalen Williams, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Cade Cunningham, and Tyler Hero. So I like Jalen Brunson's odds a lot more based on his teammates. I also think his team is probably one of the weakest here, though. So I'm gonna say no because of Anthony Edwards, potentially Victor Wembanyama, maybe even Giannis, and I'm sure LeBron, if this is his last, which I don't think it is. I think he'll do one more season, and if he's in the NBA next year, he'll be an All-Star next year if he's healthy. But if he treats it like it's his last one, which he could, because anything could happen in terms of injuries in the future, I think LeBron James could be gunning for this MVP as well. So
yeah, I don't. I absolutely don't. I don't think either of these guys will. Also, we didn't even add in the factor that karl-Anthony Towns is still going to probably be nursing his finger injury, and I don't think he's trying to go hard for anything that weekend. And Knicks fans, you just want him to come home healthy. That's what you want for both of them.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Just come home healthy.
Yeah. You just want them to be there. That's it. You just want them to be there, get the respect.
Be there, get up a couple shots, sit on the bench.
Stay out of trouble,
Stay out of trouble. There you go. And that's it. Just do that. Thanks to everybody in the chat. My guy Hector from Uptown Sports.
Yes.
He says, what's the news with Ben Simmons being waived? Well, he will not be going to the Knicks. I can tell you that. There's been some talk that the Cavs and the Clippers are the front runners for his services. I also would not rule out the Lakers there with the Rich Paul connection, clutch connection. I would not rule them out there.
If they're financially able to do it, which I don't know. I have to just sort of look at where everybody's cap sheet is after the trade deadline. We know the Knicks can't though. Right. And if the Cavs, see, the Cavs are interesting because they have a hole and Knicks fans should know this, they have a hole at backup center because it's kind of like you're looking around and it's like, all right, I guess Tristan Thompson will do.
Yes.
So, and they've staggered, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley a fair amount. So I do wonder what that could look like. I think they're going to be looking for a backup big. I don't know if Ben Simmons immediately solves that problem, but I mean, he's better suited to do that than he is to be a point guard. But I think he, if he's in that point forward role and he could guard multiple positions for a little bit and just play make, I think Ben Simmons makes a lot of sense for Cleveland. So I don't know how consequential he'll be because buyout market guys rarely ever are, but I mean, a couple of years ago, we saw the Heat get Kevin Love, and then that helped them ultimately get to the NBA Finals because they were starting Caleb Martin at the 4 before that, and then they sized up with Kevin Love, and it helped. So
there's few times where it works, and sometimes it's just it has to be a perfect fit for a need with a team where it really works. But most often than not, buyout market guys are just to add some depth to help you get through the end of the season,
right?
Or to use your term again, break glass in case of emergency.
Although now, with the CBA kind of maybe forcing your hand a little bit in terms of, hey, you couldn't find a deal because it's hard to find deals without, many different teams involved or whatever. It kind of makes sense from the standpoint of you may actually get a couple more buyout guys that are somewhat meaningful now. Ben Simmons is not what he was before, but could he help in a 8th, 10th man role?
Absolutely.
Would he be super qualified for that? Yeah, maybe in the right place.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, our last real or not before we get out of here. Knicks did trade for Delon Wright. Jericho Sims went to the Bucks. That was part of the deal with Chris Middleton and Kyle Kuzma. Delon Wright, will he shoot above 27% from the field as a Knick? He's shooting 26% from the field this season, guys. I got to think, change the scenery. He gets under the bright lights of the garden. He gets some minutes. He's going to shoot better. Or is he going to be like Ben Simmons and not want to shoot at all? I don't know. Can't tell you. What do you say, Bryan? Does he shoot above 27% from the field? Because, look, I want to say he can't shoot worse, but you can. You absolutely can. You can shoot worse. So, what do you say? You say is he above 27% or not?
I will say he does that. I think he shoots above this from 3 also. I like Delon Wright. I've liked him for a long time. I think that, he was dealing with some injuries reportedly in Milwaukee because if you look at his production and who he's been, this season he had in Milwaukee just doesn't make sense. So he needs to be healthy, but, we'll see. Hopefully he remains on the roster too. And I think that if that's the case, you could be talking about him, like I said yesterday, just giving you that defense on the perimeter, which is what he's mainly there to do. But yes, he should shoot better than 27% from the field because he's never been anything close to that in his career. The lowest he's been from the field is about 40%, which is where he was last year. I think the key thing for him though is just the defense and the 3-point shooting. He's a career 35% 3-point shooter, which is basically league average.
Right.
But the last couple years, he's been better than that. Or over the course of the last few years, actually, he's been better than that. Now that I'm looking at it, 37% in 1920 and 2021, and 21-22 was 38, and then 35 and back up to 37. So that's a really good stretch of some positive 3-point results, and they're going to need that. And if he hits threes, ultimately, he's going to play.
If he hits threes in defense, he will play. He will get minutes. He will take Landry Shamet's minutes and maybe get some more because Tom Thibodeau has not been that confident. You've seen 10 minutes for Landry Shamet one game, then 5, then maybe 7. It's kind of unknown, and you can see that Tibbs has been wavering with Landry Shamet and also Cameron Payne. And sometimes with Cameron Payne, it's because Cameron Payne will do Cameron Payne stuff. But shout out to my fellow Steelers fan. He sometimes will do some Cameron Payne stuff. But so I get all of that. I think he'll defend well. I think the unknown is the offense. How much was it just being in Milwaukee? Does change the scenery help him? I think we're going to find out. There's a way where this trade could end up in a couple of weeks, and we're like, man, Delon Wright's defending. He's knocking down a couple threes a game. You're feeling good about the minutes he's given off the bench. We'll see. This does have the potential to be sneakily a better trade than some people may recognize. I'm not saying any of you guys out there should get excited about Delon Wright. I understand why you're not excited about Delon Wright. Brian's probably the only person that would be excited about Delon Wright. But it could be fine, right? If you hit on a trade like this and he ends up being very productive, well, that's fine. Then you don't have to worry about the buyout market. And we don't have to talk about TJ Warren and Moses Brown and, we don't have to do that anymore.
By the way, he was pretty good in the playoffs last year, and he does have playoff experience, so I think that matters. He has 41 games of playoff experience last year with the Heat. He was one of the only players who had a decent series against the Celtics. Shot 60% from 3 on limited attempts, but he was very effective in that series. And Spoelstra played him a ton because, they didn't have a lot of answers.
They didn't have a lot to play. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They didn't have a lot of options necessarily.
He played 27 minutes a game. He started a game. He was also actually against the Heat in that Hawks series from a few years ago. We're going into it. There was a debate about who's a better player between Jimmy Butler and Trae Young, which is ridiculous. And we saw how that sort of went. But Delon Wright's got playoff experience. And for people who may not remember, he was with the Raptors for a number of years before they won the championship. And he was on some of those teams that made playoff runs into the second round of the playoffs. So
yeah, he's got the playoff experience. So we'll see how that all goes. That's going to do it for this edition of Knicks Weekly Live. New York Got Game. New episode coming out on Monday around New York Got Game. A little bit unsure. We're going to see how things go with the Celtics coverage tomorrow. May also talk a little bit of St. John's. They're playing really, really well. They got a big game tonight against UConn. It was a big week for St. John's, and they had a big win the other night, which was a good environment at the Garden over Marquette. That was really fun. The Garden was rocking for that one. It was a really, really good crowd. I hadn't been to a St. John's game at the Garden in quite some time, and that was dope. So basketball vibes are pretty good in New York, man. Like, basketball vibes are good. You got the Knicks. They've won 7 out of 8. You got St. John's. They've won 8 out of 9. They are ranked number 12 in the country. The Liberty just won a championship last year. They're looking to go back-to-back. It's not bad. And the Nets, we're just waiting on you to rebuild. That can happen too. Yeah. So it's not bad vibes. Not bad vibes for the basketball.
Better than football. A lot better than football.
That is true. That is true. Yeah, football got to step the game up because the baseball vibes should. Baseball vibes
Pete Alonso is back, baby.
Yeah, baseball vibes should be good this year. But football, they got to step their game up a little bit. They got some work to do over there. All right, he's Bryan Fonseca. I'm Dexter Henry. We'll be back next week where we will be after the Hawks game. So we'll do a little look at, recap sort of the Knicks' first half of the season as they're at the All-Star break. So we'll be back with a show next Thursday for you guys. As I said, new episode coming on Monday. More details coming on that. He's Bryan Fonseca. I'm Dexter Henry. Special thanks to our great producer, Jeff Stansberry, doing a fantastic job, as always, with these live shows. And we'll see everybody next week. Peace.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.